figuring it out how to price your services for a global market can be very tricky, but it's crucial to get it right. Otherwise, you're going to be ending up working long hours for not so much pay, and that's the whole point of getting an international client is to avoid that. Yeah, we're going to again in this episode explore strategies and stuff that Shay and I have done ourselves to make sure that we're balancing competitiveness with profitability. If you don't have an international strategy or you're ready to fine tune, hopefully we can give you some tips so that you can maximize your global opportunities. So, Shay, how do you approach pricing for the international markets?
So I don't charge my South African rate, which is why I want international clients in developed countries, because I want to be able to charge more and work less, which is always the ultimate goal of a freelancer, in my opinion. So
Do more, do less for more. Is
100%,
Yeah,
that
that's
is
my
it. That's why we
overarching
do what we
goal.
do.
Yeah.
So the way that I approach it is I will do research into the going rates in that country. And I'll research what a more junior rate would be. And then I sell myself as a mid to senior writer at the junior rate. So we both win, provided
Mm,
that the junior rate is actually higher than what I would normally charge in South Africa. So, and I mean, even with that, there's such huge variation. But I'll use, like the standard online people per hour and take that. But then I'll also look at what people are posting on social groups, what job opportunities are out there, the kind of rates that are going, and then come up with something that feels good to me based on what I've seen in the market, that it incentivizes me for the work, but is also still the client is getting a bit of a deal.
mm,
How do
mm.
you go about it?
Essentially, I've taken my my South African rate and I've converted it to a dollar rate. But then I benchmark it on an international rate. So I will kind of, what do people in the US charge? What do freelancers charge in the US for web writing? And if it's $55 an hour, then I'll make sure that I'm coming in maybe $5 to $10 an hour less than that. Which, when you convert your rand rate to dollars is usually going to be the case anyway. But yeah, I try and I want to earn the dollars or the euros. So I will have a look at what that particular rate is in that country, and I'll try and just discount it a little bit. But again, we're coming back to something that we've discussed before is, yeah, we're looking at an hour rate or that sort of thing. I'm trying to move away from a time-based model. So I'll still look at a project rate for that thing. But it's just easy to give an hourly
Mhm.
rate as a ballpark or a benchmark when you're quoting somebody.
Exactly. So it's something we've spoken about in the past, where I don't necessarily charge an hourly rate. I barely do, but I use that to inform my project rate based on how long I think the
Mm,
job will take me, etc. So my brain
yeah,
thinks in an hourly rate, but that's not what I would present to clients.
yeah, yeah. Have you got international clients asking for discounts? Because this is a huge bugbear of mine. And you know, I can't stand it when even a South African client you haven't even quoted and they're telling you to like come in strong on pricing. And we've got limited budgets. That's really not the kind of client that I'm looking for, because you know that they're going to be a nightmare straight off the bat if they've asked for a discount before you've even quoted. But being in a developing country or a third world country, we are already cheap labor, especially if you've done your benchmarking and that sort of thing. Do you discount stuff in international for international clients?
So, no, the kind of client that asks for a discount is not going to end up a client. But that being said, I often get messages, mainly on LinkedIn, from international companies that say we're looking for a writer. And I check out the company. I think, oh, that looks pretty good. The person looks legit. This isn't a scam. And then I'll send them a quote and they'll say, oh, this is a lot more than we expected to pay. I think there is a perception
Mm,
out there that because we are in a developing country, that our services our rates are way lower than any other, which isn't always the case. I mean, maybe you are competing with the likes of your Upwork and Fiverr, where you may have people from India, the Philippines, where the cost of living is a bit lower. Maybe people can justify a lower hourly rate. But regardless of where you live, your rate is your rate. And I'd really want to urge people not to discount or be exploited, actually.
Mm.
Because, I mean, if you think about it, if you look at the minimum wages in those countries, so let's say, for example, in the US, I think, depending where you are, what state you're in, you're looking at a minimum wage for a fast food worker is around, like, I think it's about $16 an hour. But you'll see jobs online that are offering skilled work, and not saying that your fast food worker isn't skilled. There is a skill to that, but offering $10 an hour, which is below the minimum wage in that country or in that state. So I think those opportunities, those are people that are just looking for cheap labor, and the kind of companies that are looking for cheap labor, never mind the fact that you're not being paid enough, they're also just not great companies to work for if all they're looking to do is save on costs, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. If I wanted to compete on price, then I would go on to Fiverr or Upwork. My price is my price, and if you ask for a discount even before you've received the quote, I will probably tell you to fuck off. So, you have to understand, or you have to be quite strict with yourself in terms of, yes, okay, this is a US-based client, but don't forget that even though they're paying you in dollars and you're doing that sum in your head because the dollar is 18 Rand to the dollar or whatever it is, the whole point of getting an international client is to earn more. So if you are earning the same or less than you would earn in South Africa doing that same job, then why are you doing it with all those added issues with international payments and time zones and potential language and cultural differences? Don't do it for
Fees.
less than what you would do the job for in South Africa. And if you're looking at from a long-term perspective as well, I mean, the rand is devaluing all the time. So, although you're earning in dollars, your rand buying power is devaluing still. So make sure that you're earning a living wage and that it's at least keeping up. You're never going to outstrip inflation, unfortunately, but at least keeping up with inflation if you've got those international clients that are kind of questionable from a payment pricing perspective.
And I think that's a really good benchmark that you put in place, that you will not go below, I'd say even 20% more than your South African rate, because that 20%, as we spoke about in previous episodes, taking into account the fees, exchange rates, blah, blah, blah. So if you can't charge 20%, that's Shay and Megan's rule right now. If you can't charge more than 20% of your South African rate, it's not worth your time. And, also back yourself. Like, I'm speaking from the perspective of South Africans. We, in general, are really good workers and we're really sought after. Even if you're not a native English speaker, a lot of people can speak really decent, understandable, almost neutral sounding second language English. So there are a lot of benefits for hiring people like us. So don't sell yourself short. Time zone wise, if you're working for companies in the EU, you're on a similar time, if not the same time zone. So all of those things actually make you an asset. You're the asset.
Yeah. Just on that point, and I know it's a little bit besides the point, but all the best editors I've ever worked with have been Afrikaans native speaking. English is their second language. I think that English people just don't care enough to understand the language rules as much as Afrikaans
Also,
people
English
do.
is really hard. So if you're able to learn English as a second language, props to you. I would hate to learn English as a second language. So, that's probably why you're already miles ahead of us native speakers.
Yeah. Let's speak about a point you brought up in a previous episode about building in buffers for things like exchange rate fluctuations and banking fees and exchange rate
Fluctuations?
not fluctuations, fees, admin fees,
Correct.
or yes. So do you build in a buffer on your price on top of the minimum 20% above your South African rate, etc., etc.?
No. So that minimum 20% that I spoke about now, that is just our absolute lowest benchmark that we're telling everyone over here is, if you really need the work, add 20% to it and you can charge your South African rate, but ideally don't. So no, I will build that in on top of the rate that I've already sort of come to as the senior writer selling themselves as a junior writer.
Mm-hmm. You are a lot more advanced and business savvy than me, because I don't charge I don't charge additional rates. Like, that kind of buffer is hopefully built into my rate already. So whether
Yeah,
it's a
so
South
that's the
African
same.
or I mean, it's not a separate line item. The only separate line
Oh
item I've
no,
got
no.
is for last minute work. I charge a surcharge for stuff that you want in like 24 or 48 hours.
Yeah. Just to clarify, I will never put that as a line item because I'll build it into my rate, because I don't like line items, because then it's more things for clients to pick at. This is the rate. This is what you're getting for it. The rest of it is my problem, and the admin time that I'm building in. Take it or leave it with the rate. That includes everything that you're getting from me. Because otherwise, they can sit and, again, sorry, this is probably off topic, but sit and look at your invoice and say, well, actually, there wasn't that much admin to do this month, so I don't want to pay this full amount or whatever. So, yeah, just I
mean, that's standard. On your invoice, include exactly what the project includes. And I do include like admin research, back end, this, that, and the next thing, meetings, interviews, etc. But I don't. I give a project rate that includes like all of those things as part of the project. So
likewise.
So do you, let's speak different markets. Do you have different pricing tiers for different regions, or do you have one kind of set standard, this is my international rate vibe?
No, I'll do region specific based on the research that I've done on that region. And what I've found is, obviously there's huge ranges wherever you are, but in general, I find the US to be the best paying if you can find the right kind of client. That's just been my experience. And the EU to a certain extent. The UK, I'm often surprised actually by how low some of the advertised rates are that I've seen.
I don't have like regional differences. I tend to kind of ballpark my figures. So like I said earlier, I'll check a specific hourly rate for web writing, or a white paper is charged at this amount. And I'll kind of check across various different time zones and not time zones, markets or regions. And then I'll probably look at averaging or taking the highest possible one, depending on how greedy I'm feeling when I'm doing that particular quote.
Always. Remember, as I always say, if you have to send your eyes when you send the quote, close your eyes when you send the quote, you're doing it right.
Yeah, don't send your eyes.
Please don't send your eyes.
Some kind of Godfather, like, here's my quote, and I'm watching as you read this. You will give me the business. Cool. So we're keen to hear from you guys. How do you approach your international pricing? Do you have specific pricing tiers for different regions? Do you have a flat rate? Is your international rate based on your South African rate? How do you approach international pricing? And is it worth it for you? Like, is the return on investment with all those extra bits and bobs, is it worth getting paid in dollars? Because let's be honest, sometimes it's not. Please pop us a DM or pop a comment in the comments on YouTube or Spotify. You can comment on Spotify now as well. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you in the next round of episodes. Thanks so much for joining us.